Okay, first one say all praises, glory and honor to Yahweh, Shimon Shai, Bashim Kalkadash. I'm gonna get double honors to the elders, apostles, and teachers, great millstone for my learning and truth. Now say Shalom to the hopeful elect of Israel. And I'm gonna center this on how the so-called white man is moving to recreate the world in his image and rule over everybody. And a lot of people don't understand that things like diversity and inclusivity, especially our people, which are the fucking worst, and this is mainly to our people, but they don't understand that things like diversity and inclusion are just distractions. And when you actually go into how these niggas think, especially when you go into the hook-nosed Abraham Lincoln people, they refer to the people, and when you watch these, like, there's videos on YouTube where you have people interviewing these niggas, you know, getting their thoughts on how they feel about everybody else, and the vast majority of them think, or a lot of them look down on the people, on the rest of the people of the world, and state that they are better than the rest of the people of the world, Americans included. They look down on everybody else. And that's not a new thing for nations to think that they're better than other nations. But that's how the people really feel. You know, the so-called white man is the same way. He might not want to admit it because it may not be the politically correct thing to do, but that's how they feel. But here you have the United Nations Pact for the Future. UN adopts pact that aims to save global cooperation. And once again, they use this type of terminology to make it seem like it's a good, wholesome thing. But the scriptures talk about how so-called white man is a serpent. You know, like what, his words are smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. The things he says sounds good. It will make you feel a certain way. But his, what's that word, that term, subversion? His intentions are different. His intentions are the polar opposite, actually. And when you have this whole, global thing with everybody coming together, you have to think, who are they coming together under? Is everybody going to come together equally? Because no matter where you are, there has to be a leader. In any type of organization or any type of, group get together, there always has to be a leader, whether that person's leading through others or whether that person's leading directly. There has to be a leader. There'll always be a leader. And the so-called white man aims to be that leader. Whether it's of your household, whether it's of the BLM movement, those three top bitches, they were leading, and there was somebody above them. Sean Diddy Combs, right? People call him the ringleader of this whole little human trafficking thing, but he has handlers himself, and they were working through him. There's always a leader. There's no equality, does not exist. Sure, you may have equal rights. You may be able to do the same thing in the same capacity as another person, but that doesn't mean you're equal. I'm just going to jump through. The United Nations General Assembly adopted a pact for the future on Sunday, which UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres described as a landmark agreement that is a step to change towards more effective, inclusive network multilateralism. The pact, which also includes an annex on working toward a responsible, sustainable digital future, was adopted without a vote at the start of the two-day summit of the future. The agreement came after some 9 months of negotiations. I remember going to one of these articles and it mentioned how everybody, and that's another thing they've been pushing. Everybody, they're going to make sure everybody has a digital ID. That digital ID is something that they've been pushing. Everybody should have a digital ID so they can be identified, so they can have, access to all these other amenities and things. But that, once again, new world order, global domination. That's how these niggas think. And the so-called white man, the Ashkenazis, Amalek is at the helm of this shit. I'm looking for if it mentions that in this one. Because that ID going into digital ID going into what? The MOTB, in which they'll be able to document everybody. Nobody is going to be off the grid, and if you are off the grid, you're off the grid. You lose access to these amenities that you get through that chip, and that's the end game. Because once again, the so-called white man wants to be God. And what? Sean Combs, right? This nigga, and he's a good example of that. Why? Because he has a lot of power, a lot of sway in the industry or the world that he's in. And he's been able to, for like what, 16, 17 years, he's been able to get away with a lot of shit because of the power that he has. And the power went to his head, and he ended up fucking up and getting exposed. But you can be like, what's that nigga Kanye West even said it? He calls himself a god. Why? It's because he's gassed up from the attention and the sway and the power that he has within the music industry. And that's an example of how you get power. You use it, you get influence. You think yourself to be a god, and the so-called it's no different with the so-called white man. He thinks the same fucking way. Those are just examples. And this nigga like what? Jay-Z, Beyonce, and all that. People will look down on them. People worship them. You don't think they have an inflated ego? When you have some millions upon probably billions of people validating you, reinforcing that, that's what the so-called white man has. And what he's taking it a step further by trying to become God in the form of instituting this MOTB to everybody, and being able to control their actions through like what's that shit called? Digital. It's not digital footprint, but that the social credit system. And if you're a dumbass that can't read between the lines, you're not going to be able to see this. But this is Job 5:12. He disappointeth the devices of the crafty, so that their hands cannot perform their enterprise. And that's referring to the Lord stopping the so-called white man in his tracks and trying to control the world. But his enterprise? This nigga has a goal. He has a goal in mind. And when you think about it, when you go into these so-called conspiracy theories and all this shit, these niggas, like what? Diddy has ran this shit for like 16 years. These rich niggas, what's that nigga Epstein? I don't know how long he been running his shit, but I can imagine for a while. There have been plans that these niggas have had in motion for fucking decades. And there's way worse than that nigga Diddy. What, the Lord is not gonna let this nigga fully fulfill his goal. When you go into the blessing that Isaac gave him, it was how he was gonna have the fatness of the earth. But the firstborn blessing that he traded away was the inheritance of eternity. But Esau is only going to get the rulership of the earth for a short period of time. So this isn't going to continue forever. Which is why you have Revelation 12 and 12. He knows that he had a short time. And devil's coming down with great wrath. He's coming down, well, I think with the correct word is choler, with rage and with swiftness. And what the 10 toes with miry clay goes into the UN as well. Psalms 49. And 11. Yeah. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. And what that's referring to the so-called white man thinking that he's going to be allowed to rule the world forever. That they know what he establishes, what he builds, he's going to be able to build on top of it, and that he's going to get this forever. But once again, not once again, but when you go into 2nd Ezra 6 and 9, it talks about how Esau's the end of the world. You know, that fourth beast and the statue that Daniel saw. You would have four kingdoms, four pivotal periods throughout the earth. Going to Babylonians, Medes and Persians, Greeks, and the Romans. In America, it says we go into Revelation, talks about how how they say it. The beast that had the wound and did heal. Just see if I can find it. But it's talking about Rome, and which came back to life during the Renaissance. Renaissance means rebirth. Rebirth of what? Rebirth of Roman/Edomite culture. Revelation 13 and 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast, which is referring to this Roman system. You know, the Roman system was revived. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who's like unto the beast? Who's able to make war with him?" And the dragon refers to Rome, the Roman system. And going back up here, it makes sense. Start Revelation 13 and 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise above the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns upon his horns, 10 crowns upon his heads, a name of blasphemy. 7 heads goes into the Greeks, the various Edomite factions. You know, there's a ancient 7 horns as well. I know some of them are Ostrogoths, Visigoths, Vandals, Franks. I think Anglo-Saxons is one of them. But they're there's a ancient world beast, but modern one is Greeks, the Romans, French, Spanish, British, Germanian Major, Germanian Minor, and I think Daniel talks about an 8th that came from the 7, which is referring to America, which came out of Britain. You know, when you had the whole what's that shit called? I think it was 1776, but you know they had that whole conflict where you had 14 colonies that seceded from Britain. 10 horns, 10 crowns go into the 10 founding countries of NATO, and there were 10. You know, there were originally 10, and now they grew into I don't know how many they have now, but they grew into what they have now. But this is going to the whole system that so-called white man has set up today. And that blasphemy going into his life, his lifestyle. It's blasphemy. Why? Because it's not only does he verbally insult Yahweh Shema Shai, but his ways, his ways insult Yahweh Shema Shai to his face by acting in pride and being a polar opposite of what the Lord established. But this whole system is what they think, that's going to continue forever. For Psalm 49:11, their inward thoughts is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Let me see here, because that was going to be it. Just going a little bit into that and what and what they want to do, because that's all a part. That's all a part of their plan. And what's that nigga? There was some German nigga named I think his name was Yuri Bezmenov or something like that. But he went into a rundown of how to demoralize and destroy a country, and there were certain number of steps, but with each step he literally said this step would maybe take about 5 to 7 years. This other step would take maybe about 2 to 3 years. But the reason why I mention that is because these niggas have plans that take years, probably decades, maybe even centuries to come to fruition. And this whole thing with the with the collapsing of the dollar, like these aren't like some little fucking planning board meeting, planning like you got on your job. You got your little rundown for the day. These are plans that have numerous intricate steps that move the world. Like you have dumbasses aren't. The scriptures talk about how the children of the children of the wicked are wiser than the children of light. But the so-called white man, he's a dumbass, but he's not a dumbass, if that makes sense. But then it says the knowledge of wickedness is not wisdom. He has knowledge of wickedness. But like I said, he's a dumbass, but he's not a dumbass. Meaning, he has knowledge of all these things about how to, fucking chemistry, fucking weighing fire, how to economics, how to move in the world, covert operate. He has all this different knowledge, but he's still a fucking idiot, because at the end of the day, all this shit is going to end. But you don't have dumbasses that are at the helm of all this shit that are making these plans. These niggas draw out plans that happen over multiple lifetimes. Like one guy may draw it out. Like what's that nigga? What the fuck's that nigga name? Bauer, something Bauer. But he had, on his deathbed, he had his 5 sons go out and establish 5 banks in the world, and those banks, what we know today as banks that the countries go to for money. In other words, those banks own the countries. If you own the money, you own the fucker who's getting money from you, i.e. the countries. But that was something that was instituted fucking a couple hundred years ago. But now you've had these niggas that they've had families, and they passed down these these businesses and these plans throughout their families. So the whole point, the whole thing I'm getting at is like taking over the world. It's something that takes time. There's multiple numerous intricate steps that goes into that. And these niggas are evil geniuses, whether you want to believe it or not. Cause I've been mentioning Sean Combs a lot, cause that's a good example of a evil genius. Because when you go into how he set his shit up, he's been able to get away from shit for so long because during his parties he had cameras in his mansions in which he filmed people doing shit, and he blackmailed people. He had shit on people to where he say, hey, if you don't do this or you talk about this, I send this out, or if you don't do this, I'll release this videotape or this piece of information on you to the world. He had backup plans and shit. It was a whole intricate operation he was trained to do. And even when you get to somebody training him, there's an operation, there's a whole thing behind that, because you have the niggas there at the top with the Ashkenazi niggas. Now I just watched this video with these niggas talking about how like, I don't know how true this shit is, but obviously I'm gonna fucking look into it. But it's fucking interesting. But what these niggas are talking about, how Michael Jackson, the whole thing about him being a pedophile was a smear campaign on his name, because he was talking shit about the hook nose niggas, because he wanted he wanted to own Sony, he wanted to own most of his music. And he started talking shit about the Ashkenazi, and that's another thing. Those hook nose niggas were always in control of the fucking music industry, even back then. But those Ashkenazi niggas, they didn't like that. They didn't like that he mentioned their names. They didn't like that he mentioned how they were treating them. So what? The guy talked about how they launched a smear campaign on them to pretty much try to destroy him. It didn't work. So bros talked about how I think how he dies of overdose. Somebody killed him. Now, once again, I don't know how true that shit is, but like I said, I'm gonna look into it myself. But that just goes to show you that, let's say it is true, that was a whole fucking intricate plan that went on. It's not like all these niggas getting knocked off. There's planning that goes into this shit, and people say it's evil genius shit. And once again, these niggas are fucking evil geniuses. So the whole, taking over the world, like when you go into this digital ID, the MOTB, it's not some fucking fairy tale type of plan. There's a saying that says truth is stranger than fiction. And that's a true fucking saying. But hope all that made sense. But once again, this nigga wants to take over the world, and this whole digital ID thing, this is another step in him doing that. But I hope it's edifying. See, all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bashim, Mashah, Bashim, Gakudash, Dobon, to others, possible teach great, middle, power, and truth. Shalom to hopeful like Israel, instruction, bell on great America.